Well, okay. So today we are going to start with judicial administration of the Maratha during Shivaji's period. And judicial administration generally it have two parts, civil and criminal. Generally, it was not so segregated during those days as it is done now. We have different civil codes and different criminal codes. And if you go back to Chhatrapati Shivaji's time, the justice system looks very simple, crude, and it was definitely imperfect. It did not had a elaborate, well-written code, and the village community they usually settle the matter among themselves by the traditional method. And in the village community, generally it is the Patil who was the person who received the first complaint in the village, and he tried to resolve the issue at his own level. If it cannot be done, then he will call some elderly people of the village, and generally they had certain, respectable position in the village, and people generally listen to them, and they delivered justice. And in the process, they will prepare summary of the case, write it down what the complaint person is having, and then the decision is announced. There was generally an attempt of arbitration. Arbitration means trying to resolve the issue by discussion. If there are two brothers, let us say, if they are having certain disputes related to property, those two brothers will be called in front of the elders of the village, and then they will generally talk, and they will try to resolve the issue. And then whatever is, whatever decision is reached during this arbitration, it was a duty of party to ensure that it is being complied. And then in case if the dispute is not resolved, the panchayat is called. Earlier, the party will immediately call a few people, write down the complaint, and maybe, within a short time. But if it is not possible, then the panchayat is called. And this panchayat in the village, it is called by party, and in the city area, it is generally called by Shete Mahajan. Shete Mahajan used to be rich merchant, and generally they had an important place. They had say in the administration, especially the judicial administration. And the decision is taken at panchayat, could be at the village level by party, by the panchayat that is called by party, and could be at the city level or town level, called by Shete Mahajan, that is communicated to the Mamlatdar. Mamlatdar used to be the important district officers. And Mamlatdar generally he upheld the decision that is taken at the panchayat level, uh, until unless he believed that one of the parties, uh, the panchayat has favored one of the party. It is biased. It is not neutral. And in certain serious cases, it is a Mamlatdar who really appointed panchayat. And the Mamlatdar, he will decide now who will be the member of the panchayat, and the generally that is dependent on the suggestion given by the party. Generally that happens in the house nowadays. If suppose there is a property related dispute, the brother themselves, if they are matured, they will say, okay, we'll call our elderly person, like our uncle and mama or somebody, and we will put our position, and then they will take decision that we will generally follow. And that is generally followed on the larger scale in the village or in the town. The respectable people, they were called by Mauladar in the panchayat, and then that decision is taken. And now, if the matter is very serious, generally the decision taken at the panchayat called by Mahajan Shete or by Patil is sent to Nyadhish, the judges, and then judge will finally approve the decision, because it's quite possible that if the matter is very serious and of important nature, the justice should be done. Now that is about the civil cases generally, and in case of criminal justice also, as I told you, the generally the responsibility of Patil it overlap. Patil was generally responsible for the maintenance of the law and order, and in this he is held by Kulkarni, Chaugule, and Mahar was a very important person in the village. He mainly supported ensuring of the justice. He kept watch at the night. He scrutinized the stranger. This we have discussed last time also in the administration, civil administration. He reported if there is a person whose behavior is suspicious, who is probably indulging into some criminal activities, then that matter is reported by Mahar to Patil, and it was his duty to detect the theft as well. And Mahar, as he moved around the village and to the different agriculture land to collect grain as his fees, he was knowing each and everything in the village. There was nothing important that escaped his eyes. He was a skilled tracker and he could follow the criminal to their hiding. And if the thief's footstep led to one particular village, and then he will track the thief if the theft takes place. चोरी अगर हुई है तो वो चोर के जो पदचिन्ह होते हैं उसको पीछा करते करते वो कहाँ तक जाते हैं। अगर वो किसी और विलेज के पास जाते हैं तो उसके बाद में उस गांव का उस विलेज का जो महार होता है उसकी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी बनती है कि वेयर दैट फुटस्टेप्स आर गोइंग फर्दर, वो चोर के जो पद चिन्ह है वो कहाँ पर फर्दर जाते हैं। और लास्ट में जहां तक वो चोर के पैर के निशान मिलते हैं उस विलेज को जनरली रिस्पॉन्सिबल माना जाता था कि द पर्सन फ्रॉम दिस विलेज हैज इंडल्ज इन थेफ्ट, some criminal activities, and it is now responsibility of this villager either to find him out or to pay the fine. देन क्रिमिनल जस्टिस सिस्टम में पाटिल के ऊपर डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेवल पे मामलतदार होते थे। मामलतदार के पास में थोड़ा सा स्मॉल फोर्स होता था टू इंश्योर दैट नो क्राइम इज टेकिंग प्लेस, एंड जनरली दैट इज कॉल्ड शिबंदी। सो शिबंदी वाज अ स्मॉल फोर्स टू प्रिवेंट crime. Remember, if you most probably are going to face MCQ kind of examination, because you in next month you are probably having your examination. So in case of MCQ kind of examination, you will get this kind of question: what is Shibandi? Or who looked after the justice, criminal justice in village? All right. So now this is about the village and generally of the town. And in town, in addition to that, there will be a kotwal in towns and cities. And this kotwal was having a very comprehensive duties. Like he was supposed to maintain public order, he was supposed to supervise the market, and he could give punishment to the small crime. He could confiscate the property, he could confiscate the weapon, and these kind of punishments are generally given in case of the criminal, if the person is indulging into the criminal acts. एंड इम्प्रिजनमेंट ऑल्सो, जेल में भी डाल दिया जाता था। उसके बाद में फ्लॉगिंग, फाइन लगाना, म्यूटिलेशन ऑफ द लिम्स भी होता था, हाथ पैर काट देते थे अगर कोई चोरी करता है। फॉर एग्जांपल छत्रपति शिवाजी के समय में एक केस है व्हेन दैट पर्सन हैज सेक्सुअली मोलेस्टेड अ विडो एंड उसके हाथ पैर काट दिए ऑन द ऑर्डर ऑफ शिवाजी। देन स्लेवरी, किसी को गुलामी में डाल दिया जाता था। बैनिशमेंट, निकाल देते थे गांव से या एरिया से। सामाजिक उससे सोशल बाइकआउट किसी को कर देते थे, और रेयर केस में एग्जीक्यूशन होता था, उसको जान से मार डालते थे। ऑफेंडर की जो फाइनेंशियल कंडीशन होती थी उस हिसाब से उसके ऊपर फाइन भी लगा दिया जाता था। जनरली इन केस ऑफ adultery, I hope you understand what is the meaning of adultery, having relation outside the marriage. In case जनरली वुमेन को थोड़ा सा, जिसको बोलते हैं ना, म्यूटिलेशन कर दिया जाता था, नाक काट देना, ऐसे भी पनिशमेंट दी जाती थी। लेकिन वुमेन को जनरली एग्जीक्यूट नहीं किया जाता था, वुमेन वाज नॉट किल्ड बाय द ऑर्डर ऑफ द स्टेट। treason, doing something against your country, your nation, then murder, theft, and dacoity. Generally, it was punished by mutilation, हाथ पैर काट देना। हाईवे रॉबरी अगर कोई करता था, that was a very serious offense, and that was generally punished by death. The Brahmin offenders were generally not, their head was not cut, but if they have done very serious offense, they will be poisoned or they were starved to death. So we see here caste system working in case of justice as well. Ordinary prisoners were generally the prisoners who were put in the jail. They were generally well treated, and on special occasion they were also allowed to go home. Then in case of judicial system, we find example of superstitious belief also. जैसे कि ordeal by fire and water, जैसे कि किसी को कहा जाता था कि आप ने अगर कोई गुनाह नहीं किया है तो आप भगवान का नाम लीजिए और आग में हाथ डालिए तो आपको चटका नहीं लगेगा। सो देयर वाज डेफिनेटली सुपरस्टिशियस। या फिर किसी के कमर में पत्थर बांध के उसको नदी में फेंक दिया जाता था और कहा जाता था कि आप अगर सही बोल रहे हैं तो भगवान आपको बचा लेंगे। डेफिनेटली वी डिड हैड एग्जांपल्स ऑफ दिस काइंड ऑफ सुपरस्टिशियस बिलीफ। इसके अलावा जुडिशियल सिस्टम जो थी आज की तरह बहुत स्ट्रीमलाइन नहीं थी। देयर वाज लॉट ऑफ डिपेंडेंस ऑन ट्रेडिशन। ट्रेडिशनली जो जुडिशियल सिस्टम की ग्रोथ हुई थी, जैसे कि उसमें गोत्र सभा, जाति सभा, ब्राह्मण सभा, इनका भी हमें उल्लेख मिलता है। ब्राह्मण सभा एक इंपॉर्टेंट रिलीजियस प्लेस में होती थी, और ये किसी धर्म के मामले में या कास्ट बिहेवियर के मामले में अगर किसी का कुछ somebody violates the caste rule, तो उनको उसके जो केसेस होते थे वो जनरली गोद सभा, जाति सभा और ब्राह्मण सभा देखती थी। गोद सभा मीन्स द ग्रुप ऑफ elderly people in one particular lineage. और जाति सभा का मतलब होता है कि ग्रुप ऑफ द पीपल, elderly respectable people in particular caste. सो फिर प्रायश्चित्त की भी जनरली एक ट्रेडिशन था। प्रायश्चित्त का मतलब होता है कि जैसे आपने आपके हाथ से कुछ गलती हुई है तो आप उसका प्रायश्चित्त कीजिए, मतलब कुछ ऐसा काम कीजिए कि वो आपका पाप धुल जाएगा, मतलब दान दीजिए या फिर ब्राह्मण भोज करवाइए या फिर पिलग्रिमेज पे जाइए, या फिर फास्टिंग कीजिए, ये भी प्रायश्चित्त था। पाप और पुण्य की जो संकल्पना थी, दैट हैड इन्फ्लुएंस द जुडिशियल सिस्टम। एंड मामलतदार ही जनरली इंश्योर्ड दैट द डिसीजन टेकन बाय दी सभास आर इम्प्लीमेंटेड। अब इसमें शॉर्टकमिंग ये थी कि देर वॉज नो स्टैंडर्ड कोड ऑफ प्रोसीजर, कोई स्टैंडर्ड कोड नहीं था रिटर्न, जैसे कि आजकल इंडियन पिनल कोड है। पंचायत मेंबर जो थे वो रेगुलर नहीं थे, पार्टी पंचायत के लोगों को चेंज कर देता था। और उसके बाद में पंचायत को अधिकार नहीं था कि कोई अगर उन्होंने दिया हुआ डिसीजन नहीं मानता है तो उनके पास में कोई फोर्स नहीं होता था। एंड मामलतदार के हाथ में फोर्स जरूर होता था, लेकिन मामलतदार पंचायत के डिसीजन को रिस्पेक्ट कर सकता था या फिर इग्नोर भी कर सकता था। गरीब लोगों के पास में कोई रास्ता नहीं था कि मान लीजिए पंचायत गांव में होती थी, वहां पर एक अमीर आदमी या फिर अपर कास्ट लोगों का समाज के ऊपर बहुत बड़ा प्रभाव था, नो डाउट अबाउट इट। तो गरीब आदमी को पास में अगर उसके ऊपर अन्याय हो रहा है तो ही हैड नो वे बाय व्हिच ही कैन ट्राई टू redress द grievances, एंड ओनली गाइड टू द पंचायत वाज ट्रेडिशन, केवल ट्रेडिशन और फियर और रेपुटेशन। पंचायत के लोग जो होते थे उनको अपने रेपुटेशन की भी डर होता था कि भाई मैं अगर अच्छे से जस्टिस नहीं दूंगा तो लोग मुझे क्या कहेंगे, सो ओनली दैट वाज द चेक ऑन ऑन दोस पीपल। बट इसके बाद भी इन स्पाइट ऑफ दिस शॉर्ट कमिंग, पंचायत काफी पॉपुलर इंस्टीट्यूट थी, क्योंकि जस्टिस जो है बहुत जल्दी मिल जाता था। आप आज के जैसे केसेस चलते रहते हैं बहुत सालों सालों तक, इट वाज नॉट द केस। जनरली द मैटर्स वर रिजॉल्व्ड very quickly and the process used to be generally very simple. So that is about the judicial administration. Next we will go to the military administration now. Just hold on. Well, fine. So in the military administration, I had divided this lecture on military administration into two parts. First, we will talk about how the forts were administered, and then after that, we will talk about army administration. Because fort was one of the important dimension of the Maratha forces, and Chhatrapati Shivaji and Marathas, they have made very effective use of these forts for the defensive as well as sometimes offensive warfare as well. नाउ ये जो मराठा की जो जमीन है जहां पर शिवाजी ने अपने राज्य की शुरुआत की थी, ये आमतौर पर वेस्टर्न घाट का पार्ट है। और वहां पर कई सारे हिल्स थे, कई सारे पहाड़ थे, और उस पहाड़ों की मदद लेकर एक बहुत एक्सलेंट डिफेंसिव स्ट्रेटेजी बनाई जा सकती थी, जो कि मराठों ने बहुत अच्छे से बनाई। कोई बाहर से इन्वेडिंग आर्मी जो होती थी उसको इन पहाड़ों की मदद लेके रोकना बड़ा रिलेटिवली आसान हो जाता था। और वहां पर जो वेस्टर्न घाट के जो रॉक्स एंड माउंटेन थे उनको शिवाजी ने एक इम्प्रेग्नेबल फोर्ट्स की तरह बनाया, सो दैट द एनिमी इज नॉट एबल टू एंटर इनटू योर टेरिटरी एंड कॉन्कर इट। चिटनीस बखर में चिटनीस कहते हैं कि फोर्ट्स वेर लाइक लाइफ ऑफ द किंगडम। उस किंगडम का जीवन ही उसके ऊपर निर्भर होता था। And every pass, as it is a mountainous region, there were certain passes through which the army can enter into the Shivaji Swaraj, and all those passes were commanded by the forts. Near to that pass there will be fort, and from fort one can see the activities. If somebody is trying to enter through that pass, they can be prevented by the forces stationed on the forts. डेक्कन में वैसे भी स्ट्रॉन्ग हिल फोर्ट्स का ट्रेडिशन था। डेक्कन सुल्तानों ने उनको काफी इम्प्रूवमेंट की थी, और उसी को आगे जाके शिवाजी ने और मराठों ने इम्प्रूवमेंट किया। सभासद बखर 240 किलो की लीज देती है जो कि शिवाजी के अंडर थे. Chitnis mentioned that there were 317 forts, and Shiv Digvijay, one of the texts describing Shivaji's victory, it mentions about 361 forts. So forts were very important, more than 300 forts probably, or according to Sabasat, there were 240 forts. जो किले होते थे उसके ऊपर जो इंपॉर्टेंट ऑफिसर्स होते थे वो मेनली तीन होते थे. हवालदार, हवालदार को ही सरनौबत भी हवालदार को ही सरनौबत भी बोला जाता था. फिर सबनीस और कारखानीस. देखिए उस समय और आज भी है अनफॉर्चुनेटली, जाति व्यवस्था बहुत स्ट्रांग थी. और एक जाति के लोग दूसरे जाति के लोगों से जिसको हम लोग बोलते हैं ना, एक मिसट्रस्ट और जेलसी आमतौर पर होती थी. तो शिवाजी had tried to make use of this jealousy, jealousy among the different castes. For example, Marathas and Brahmins and Prabhu, those are the three important castes. And Shivaji, he tried to make use of these castes to prevent corruption and rebellion. For example, on the fort, generally he will keep Havaldar as Sarnobat, then Sabnis will be Brahmin, and Karkhanis will be Prabhu. So these people, three important officers on the fort belonging to three different castes, they used to keep watch over each other. And that prevented one of them becoming very strong and able to hand over the fort to the enemy. All right. And among the Brahmins also, there are different categories like Deshastha, Koknastha, and Karade. And Shivaji also exploited the internal jealousy for the betterment of the administration. They will apply, in one fort, they will have one Deshastha Brahman, and then there will be another Koknastha if required. So those two people, they will keep watch over each other. And next thing, ये जो fort के officer होते थे, दे वर फ्रिक्वेंटली ट्रांसफर्ड, क्योंकि एक ही जगह पर अगर ऑफिसर उस किले पे बहुत अधिक समय रहता है, then there is a possibility that he may become supreme, and he may misuse his position and have kind of understanding with the enemy and hand over the fort, which will be detrimental to the interest of the state. सभासद कहते हैं कि ये जो तीनों ऑफिसर होते थे इनका सेम स्टेटस होता था, एंड दे विल जॉइंटली लुक आफ्टर द एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन. इसके पीछे का उद्देश्य यही था कि कोई सिंगल पर्सन पावरफुल ना हो जो कि अपने किले को दुश्मन के हाथ में सौंप सके. सो शिवाजी वाज वेरी केयरफुल अबाउट द करप्शन. एंड वतनदार जो होते थे, ये तो हमने पहले भी पढ़ा है, आमतौर पर वतनदारों को अगर कोई बड़ा अधिकारी है तो उसको किले की जिम्मेदारी अपने वतन में नहीं दी जाती थी. ही विल बी जनरली posted far away from his own watan. Then among these three important officers, what were the duties of Havaldar or Sarnobat? He was in charge of the fort. In fact, he had that mudra, the seal. The fort keys generally remain with him. He was responsible to open the gate in the morning and close it in the evening. And he had a very strict instruction that gates are not to be open after sunset. And in Chitnis Bakhar, Chhatrapati Shivaji, in Chitnis Bakhar, Chitnis mentions one episode where Shivaji has tested whether this Havaldar are following his order or not. And once after sunset, Shivaji, he went to Havaldar and sent a message that you should open the fort gate. But Havaldar sent the message that no, according to the order of Shivaji, I am not supposed to open the gate of the fort for any case after the sunset. Shivaji said, ki, I am Shivaji, I am ordering you to open. But he said, ki, no, nothing doing. He sent some men out, through the small gate and provided blanket and comfort to Shivaji and his men. But he did not open the gate, and he opened the gate only next morning. And it is said that Shivaji was rewarded for his sincerity towards his duty. Generally, very big forts will be having two Havaldar, and one of them will be Sar Havaldar, main in charge of the fort. And sometimes, there are very big forts like Raigad, which was the capital of Shivaji, which was the capital of Shivaji. And then in those cases, there will be, Havaldar and Sarnobat, generally they are used as synonym. But in those cases, on the big fort, there will be a number of Sarnobat. Like there will be Machi Sarnobat, a person who is responsible for a Machi, the place where the soldiers can stand and fire on the enemy. Or there will be Tat Sarnobat, that is, a rampart, the wall which protects the fort. So depending on the size and the importance of the fort, number of officers could be more or could be less. Then comes Karkhanis. Karkhanis was generally, in charge of the supply of food and equipment. Whatever is required on the fort that is supposed to be procured by Karkhanis and kept ready. It could be store of grain and it could be store of war material as well. And he supervised and wrote all income and expenditure. He was responsible for the distribution of the store, but he has to do it in the presence of the clerk of subnis. So where there is a store, there is a possibility of corruption. So subnis will keep a watch that Karkhanis is not doing something illegal. He is not indulging in corruption. He is not unnecessarily spending the equipment or buying the equipment which is of not standard. So he can, Karkhanis place an order for the goods and commodities required for the food, but they also need to be approved by subnis and Havaldar. What were the duties of subnis? We will talk later on after this. In case of war, the female slave, boy servant, and cattle were captured and taken to the fort. So Karkhanis is supposed to take their responsibility, and he was also supposed to supervise the construction of the work, and that work will be again inspected by subnis. So Shivaji has tried to maintain balance and counterbalance. Subnis generally a Brahmin, Karkhanis was generally Prabhu. The subnis was generally an in charge of the account. He will prepare the estimate of the revenue under the jurisdiction of the fort. The fort will have certain jurisdiction from where they can take revenue. He was supposed to inspect the account, maintain the muster roll. Muster roll means the list of the people who are working on the fort and how they are paid. So on each order for store, Havaldar, Subnis, and Karkhanis has to put their seal and sign. So no one person became very, very powerful. And daily account of all these departments should be done under the supervision of Karkhanis, and Subnis will also sign there. All order of expenditure should be issued by subnis. If any order is issued for a district under the fort, then that order is to be signed by all three, that is Havaldar, Subnis, and Karkhanis. Though muster roll is made by subnis, Karkhanis scrutinize it before it is approved. So we see here Karkhanis now putting check over subnis. In earlier case, subnis put check over Karkhanis. Subnis is responsible for any queries about account to Havaldar or district authority or central authority. So if there is any query about account, subnis will answer that. All correspondence should be adopted by subnis. He will put his sign on all letters. And Subedar will seal the letters and Karkhanis should make entry in his leisure. So all three officers, they maintain check and balance over each other. Shivaji generally kept his fort's provision and he also sanctioned a huge amount for the upkeep of the fort. He took care that, generally it is easier to fight from the fort with a small number of people. So generally on the fort we find that usually 500 people will be there. On the bigger fort there will be around 1000 people, and in warlike situation generally their number has increased. Stone and boulders were accumulated on the fort so that they can be hurled down, thrown on the approaching enemy. वहां पर कई फोर्ट में आर्टिलरी भी होती थी, इसकी भी हमें जानकारी मिलती है. And at the feet of the fort, there used to be the people called Ramoshi, and they generally perform the duty of watchman. They will go around the fort, ensure that no enemy is attacking, nobody is secretly sinking into the fort, secretly entering into the fort, and they will give a call. Then on the fort, number of soldiers were there, and they were also divided rank-wise. For example, there will be common soldiers, and all that on the above, on the one for 9 soldiers, there will be one naik. And on the fort, there will be musketeers. Musketeers means, it's a muzzle-loaded gun, the crude gun that the Indian soldiers, Indian ruler generally purchase from the European people, and they need to be put the gunpowder and bullet from the top and then fired upon. So it was not definitely not a very advanced weapon during those days. Then there will be spearman, there will be archers, and there will be light arm man who will fight with the light swords. Mm, the people who are staying as fort played a very important role in the defense of the Swarajya. So who will be there on the fort and the important officers, they were generally selected by the king. And if somebody is appointed as Sarnabat, the important in charge of the fort, then some other very important officers in the administration has to sign guarantee for him. All right. And the people on the fort generally they were known as Gadkari, and on the fort there were other number of people who will support the people working on the fort. Like there will be Brahmin, there will be Jyotishi, there will be Vaidya, medicine man, there will be blacksmith, there will be carpenter and cobbler. We get an information that Havaldar, the in charge of the fort, was generally paid 125 huns per year, and hun was the coin that started by Shivaji. And none of this post was hereditary. Shivaji has tried to remove the hereditary succession, as we have seen earlier. These people will be appointed depending on their capacity. So here the fort administration is over. I will talk about the military administration, that is army administration now. Well, so generally, the army is divided into the two parts. During Shivaji's time, army was divided into two parts, that is infantry and cavalry. And earlier, during the earlier phase of his conquest, he generally relied on infantry because those were the defensive war that he fought. And mostly the infantry is having an advantage that they can play a very effective role in the mountainous region, guerrilla warfare that the Marathas have used. They will suddenly come down, descend from the hill, attack the enemy, and then they can withdraw to the area where it is difficult to chase them on the by a mounted soldier, horse mounted soldier. So earlier phase, Shivaji recruited Mawale from the Western Ghat near Pune and the musketeers from Konkan called Hatkari. So these musketeers were the expert gunners. So they were expert climber and marksman. They were expert in sword fighting as well. These Mawales. And they were small in stature. Their height not was not too. They were not having great height, but they were very sturdy people. They can put up with a lot of hardship. काफी उनमें सहन करने की. You understand the meaning of sturdy means a person who can put up with a lot of work, a lot of hardship, and it's because of that they were very suitable for the guerrilla warfare as well as for the fort defense. And they can very quickly attack the enemy in the marching in the mountain, and quickly escape in the mountain where it will be difficult to find them. And this constituted a very important part of Shivaji, Maure and infantry. And it's only after his victory over Afzal Khan that Shivaji started keeping the more number of cavalry. At the time of Shivaji's death, there was 1 lakh cavalry and 1 lakh infantry. So the arms that is used by soldiers of Shivaji were sword, shield, dagger, poniard, straight rapier, spear, bows and arrows, and when possible, matchlock, that is gun. So different weapons I'll show you. So you see, this is a small sword that is generally used by the Maratha soldier. It's very easy to handle depending as the Marathas they were having short height. And they can easily maneuver this sword, and it's also easy to carry as well. At the same time, there were these different kind of weapon. For example, this is called khanda, having a very straight blade. Then khanjar is a small blade. Then katar, you can hide. This is a talwar, and this is the danpatta. We know Baji Prabhu Deshpande was very expert in using this weapon. Then Samshir, a tilted weapon, and Firangi was a straight sword. Then this is a small sword called paniard. Small, you can call it small, or you can call it a long knife as well. Then this is another weapon, straight rapier. Then Marathas were also known for very expert spear wielder, javelin. So these are the different kind of spears that the Marathas use. Then this is a very crude form of matchlock. The gunpowder and the bullet has to be put from the top in the nozzle, and then it can be fired upon. It can be fired on. This is a bows and arrows used for defense generally, as well as for the this is the generally you find a portrait of the Maratha soldier, how they dress up. They draw a pair of breeches and then cotton jama it is called, and on that top there will be jacket and there will be turban. This is breaches that they use generally. And let us talk about rank structure in the army. For 10 soldiers, there will be one nayak. In case of food, for 9 soldiers, there will be one nayak. But in case of infantry, there will be one nayak on the 10 on about 10 men. And for every 50 soldier or for 5 naik, there will be havaldar. And for 100 soldier, for 2 or 3 havaldar, there will be jumladar and a commander of 1,000 for 10 jumla. Generally, he is known as Hazari. Then over 7 Hazari, we have Sarnobat, who generally commanded 7,000 infantry. Esaji Kank was the first Sarnobat of infantry. And they generally received regular salary from the government. Soldier generally received 4 to 12 rupees per month. Jamaat Jumladar received 100 hon per month. And he was assisted by Subnis. Subnis is a person who generally kept account. We have seen it in case of the fort. And Jumladar, the very important commander, generally he will be assisted by Subnis. And Subnis was also given 40 hons per month. Hazari, he got 500 hons. And his Subnis, he also had a Subnis. Subnis is an accountant again, and Subnis, his Subnis got 100 to 125 hones. The regular infantry, when they went on expedition, generally they will be supported by the Maoris, who were not part of the regular army. There were Maoris in the regular army, but generally when they go on march, they will be joined by the other Maoris also. Uh, for time being temporarily, and they were not paid regular salary, but they will be given grain by the state. Well, now development of cavalry, as now after Afzal Khan's defeat, Shivaji has started his expanding his kingdom. We have seen that he attacked North Konkan. So that kind of expedition, generally cavalry is required for the aggressive warfare and conquest. So he started distance campaign against Bijapur and Mughal, and this small cavalry consisted of 25 troopers. So this is Bargir or Paga. Now, what is Bargir and Paga? I'll tell you. But on above 25 men, there will be Havaldar in cavalry, and 5 Havaldar with their 25 men each, they form a Jumla, and that is commanded by Jumladar. And over 10 Jumladar, there will be one Havaldar, and higher rank, generally Panch Hajari, and they will be commanding 5,000 soldiers. And top, we get references to the top Sarnobat of cavalry, top commanders of cavalry like Netaji Palkar, Prataprao Gujar, Hambirao Mohite. They were the very famous cavalry commander of their time. Well, now for every 25 unit of 25 people, there will be a Nalband. Nalband means a smith who repair the shoes of horses. Horses on the march, they need a blacksmith so that can be repaired. जिसको घोड़े की नाल बोलते हैं ना, उसको रिपेयर करने वाला हर 25 लोगों के साथ में एक होता था. फिर हर 25 लोगों के साथ में एक पखलजी भी होता था, वाटर कैरियर. सोल्जर नीड वाटर, सो इट वाज responsibility of पखलजी that he should fill his leather bag later and provide it to the soldier. Then Paga Zumladar was having salary of 500 homes per year, and he had a right to use palki. He was assisted by Muzumdar with salary of 100 to 125. Muzumdar is again an accountant, and Hazari had a salary of 1,000 hon per year. Now, under Hazari, there will be Muzumdar, a Maratha Karvari, who will look after the general welfare or general provide the general thing that is required for the army. And there will be revenue writer, Jamanavis, and for whom 500 homes were assigned. The account of military income and expenditure are to be signed by all these 4 people. So here again, Shivaji tried to maintain balance and counterbalance. Panchhajari cavalry commander generally draw the salary of 2,000 hons, and again under Panchhajari there will be a Muzumdar, Karvari, and number of clerk and spies to assist him. The Panchhazari were under the command of Sarnobat, and now this we come across the people like Shiledar. Shiledar were the people who brought their own horses, and they fought for Shivaji. They will be organized separately under the command of Sarnobat of cavalry, definitely. And at the end of Shivaji's career, he had 1 lakh cavalry, and out of that, 1/4 were Shiledar, 25,000 were Shiledar. Shivaji maintained a very strict discipline in his during his movement, and he ensured that whenever the soldiers are camping, surrounding areas, surrounding people are not troubled. Whenever the army is coming back during the rainy season, as the rainy season during the rainy season there will be no campaign, the huts will be kept ready for them, and generally on Dashera, this army march out for the enemy territory. At the time of the departure, whatever the belonging soldier have carried, all that list will be made, and after he comes back from campaign, that will be checked. Anything he is extra is having, that will be confiscated by the state. The commander need to submit all the loot to the king, and during the campaign, the troop had to subsist on looting. Shivaji generally said, "Ki on campaign you have to support yourself. No woman, female slave, or dancing girl is allowed to accompany the troop. Any soldier who is violating this rule will be severely dealt with. He will be beheaded. No woman or child should be captured during the campaign. Man can be captured, but not Brahmin." And Ajnapatra, in Ajnapatra, we get mentioned how Shivaji was very meticulous in giving instructions, like about preventing fire, which I think I have already told you, that in a camp, he instructs to soldier that when you sleep, ensure that the lamp is put off. Otherwise, that burning lamp, burning wick will be carried by a mouse, and there will be fire. बाद में शिवाजी के बाद में इतना डिसिप्लिन मराठों में नहीं रहा, and that became one of the important reason of their defeat later on. Sabasad, like he gives example of Shivaji's march to Golconda. जब वो गोलकोंडा में जा रहे थे तो कोई भी सोल्जर उनका अगर इफ दे वायलेट डिसिप्लिन दे वर डील्ड वेरी सीवियरली. Of course, Shivaji was not 100% successful, because generally the Marathas and the Indian soldier known to be quite unruly. As later on, East India Company and the Britishers, they put a lot of discipline among the army. इवन शिवाजी के टाइम में भी जो चाफड़ में जो पिलग्रिमेज जाते थे, जो तीर्थ यात्रा करने जाते थे, उनको सोल्जर तंग करते थे, उनसे पैसे लेते थे. 1676 की एक केस है, जब के वहां पर जब आर्मी थी और उनको जब खाना कम पड़ने लगा, तो जबरदस्ती से उन्होंने लोगों से ग्रेन छीन लिए थे. एंड शिवाजी ने उसके लिए उनको वार्निंग दी थी कि देयर शुड बी एडिक्वेट प्रोविजन एंड यू शुड नॉट गिव ट्रबल. शिवाजी हैज ट्राइड हिज बेस्ट, नो डाउट अबाउट इट. एक इंपॉर्टेंट बात जो शिवाजी की कैवेलरी की थी, वो थी वेरी स्विफ्ट मूवमेंट. दे हैड अ वेरी लेस बैगेज. बहुत कम सामान उनके पास में होता था. हैवी आर्टिलरी नहीं होती थी, भारी तोपें नहीं होती थी, and his cavalry could move very swiftly. And to ensure the speed, generally Shivaji kept one horse extra for two soldiers. For example, if there are two soldiers, for two soldiers there will be three horses, so that while on the march, one horse is moving without a rider. And in that case, you can move very softly. एक horse को हमेशा थोड़ा आराम मिलता था, because he doesn't have to carry a soldier on his feet, on his back. सोल्जर की जो डाइट थी वो काफी सिंपल थी. दे वेर हार्डली प्रीजन, गरीब किसान वो आमतौर पर थे. सो दे वेर हैबिचुएटेड विद पुटिंग अप विथ लॉट ऑफ डिप्रिवेशन एंड लॉट ऑफ डिफिकल्ट सिचुएशन. सो जैसे ही वो एक जगह से दूसरी जगह जाते थे, दे विल गैदर देयर प्रोविजन, खाना या खेत से अनाज ले लेते थे, और उसी के ऊपर उनका गुजारा हो जाता था. दे वेर नॉट एडिक्टेड टू प्लेजर. बहुत ज्यादा ऐश आराम की जिंदगी जीने के वो आदी नहीं थे. In contrast to Mughal army, generally we find that they had a huge baggage, women, wives, and Mughal army was like a slow-moving city, and that became one of the important reasons that they could not be successful against the Marathas. शिवाजी के आर्मी में जो स्पाइस होते थे, they played a very important role. Like when Shivaji attacked Surat, or when he attacked Shaista Khan in the middle of the night, he already had a lot of information with him. The spy system of Shivaji was headed by Bahirji Naik, and Shivaji, he recruited Muslim as well. Though he called it Hindavi Swarajya, like 700 Pathans who were dismissed from the service of Bijapur, they offered service to Shivaji and they were enrolled. In fact, some of his officers, Shivaji's officers, they opposed this, but Shivaji still enrolled them. And the main army is generally supported by the army of the Watandar, but Shivaji generally was not in favor of taking the help of Watandar. Shivaji was generally regularly payment to the soldiers. He gave reward for the special act of bravery. took care of the family in case a person dies for the state. For example, he took care of Tanaji Malsare's family, and wounded soldiers were treated. Many times, the widow and the children, they were pensioned till the time child becomes capable to earn his livelihood. So, if I have to sum up Shivaji's achievement in case of army, earlier he played a defensive strategy, the infantry and the Maoris, and later on he went offensive, started having cavalry and started attacking the territory of Bijapur and Mughal. Bijapur was humbled by him, so he moved from infantry to cavalry, and swiftness, in contrast to heavy artillery, was one of the important hallmark of Shivaji's army. So here, this army administration is over. Now, in I think in your syllabus, you are left with only one thing, that is naval administration of Shivaji. Just a minute. So what we will do now is that we will take a few minutes break, and then we will come back.